What's up, everyone? Good morning and welcome back to Shaw Locals Bears Insider Podcast. I am Kyle Nabors along with Sean Hammond, and we're back after a nice week off, a good recharge week. Sean, I know we both took some time off. I know we mentioned that before we left that we were not going to be recording early this week like we typically do on Monday. Man, do you enjoy getting away for a little
Yeah,
bit?
you know what? Hey, it's nice to get out of town for a couple of days, and as much as we love the NFL too, it's nice to not be hanging on every one of Schefter and Rappaport's tweets for a couple of days.
Yeah. It's yeah, I love football season, and the second it's over, I'm gonna be complaining that I want football back. But it is nice to get away from the grind of the daily NFL media and football media in general for a little bit. So it's a little weird this year because the bye week was so late. It feels odd. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, week 14, that's as late as you can get, and you look at the schedule, and when the schedule came out, that's like one of those things where it's like it kind of sucks for the team. Like, that's a long stretch of games where they were going, and certainly for us, that means a long stretch of weeks where we're working hard, but that's okay on this end. But yeah, I mean, those players must have been feeling it after all that time.
Yeah, definitely. Want to, of course, get into if you guys haven't seen yet. I'm sure most people by now that follow the Bears have seen the update on Hub. Uh, I honestly I don't even know where to start with this, Sean. It's really come together so kind of quickly over the last week, and I'm sure, like us, everyone that's seen it has, it's been a great lift. But Hub is doing incredibly well. I guess, Sean, let's start with the fact it was 4 months today yesterday that Hub suffered the heart attack at Hallis Hall after practice covering training camp. And from a personal standpoint, I think since this is our podcast and he's our colleague who we've done this with for several years, um, it was just great. When his name popped up on my cell phone last week for the first time since that occurred, it was awesome. I mean, I can't really describe the feeling.
Yeah, it's been weird. I mean, Kyle, I love doing this with you, but our three man team turned into a two-man team for the last 4 months on the podcast, and that's been weird. Yeah, so we don't know when Hub's going to be back on the show, but it will be great when he does get back here. And yeah, he was telling me that part of the doctor's orders were to stay off the phone. So in a lot of ways, he even though he was getting better, he was staying away from talking on the phone and interacting through text and stuff like that. But yeah, that first time that you see his name or you hear his voice on the other end of the line, that's a pretty great feeling. And I got to sit down with him for a little while at his house earlier this week, and man, it was awesome. He seemed like his old self in many, many ways.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop that link in the chat actually right now. To Sean's piece. And we it took us a little bit when we first talked to Hub and we started coordinating the plan for his eventual return, as he talked about, in Sean's piece we talked about hoping for a full return sometime around the NFL Combine into the draft somewhere. His memory is getting better every single day, but as we talked about personally, how we wanted, it was great for us to be able to write the story and get it posted that he was coming back, but it's so close to us, and there's already other stories up from other outlets, and read them all. Hub certainly deserves your attention. The guy is a legend in Chicago, but yeah, really the only way I could think about you writing that story, and it turned out great, was really from a personal angle, because I think the thing that really sets Hub apart from a lot of media, and I never told him this until last week when I saw him, was part of the one of the biggest reasons he built such a huge following. And I think back, I read PFW when I was young, and like I said, I told him this for the first time, really, was where I really became a fan of Hub was when I was in college. and I was driving back and forth all the time, and I would listen to Dan and Terry on the score, and Hub would be on, several times a week, answering their questions and then doing a segment with fans. And what really stuck out with me was obviously Hub knows more about the Bears than most human beings. But it was the fact that in a time where a lot of people in media was gravitating towards hot takes,
Mm-hmm.
he really was giving you his honest opinion. He wasn't saying stuff to try and grab headlines or grab attention. And, there's plenty of times I disagree with Hub's opinion, but I've always really, really, respected his opinion. And the outpouring of support that you've seen, I think, is because of that connection he made with people.
Yeah, Hub really loves football, and Hub will, like you're saying, it's not about the hot takes with him. He watches the tape and he forms his opinions on what he's seeing. He doesn't just watch the game on Sunday and then come in on Monday morning with a hot take. He'll rewatch it again, and he studies what the Bears are doing. He watches those games like several times throughout the week, and you might disagree with his take on this or that, but that it's coming from an informed place, and that's what's really great about the work that Hub does, and I think that's what a lot of people have been missing these last few months. I've heard from numerous people just in the past couple of days that said, there's been a little something missing this year without Hub, and we certainly feel that, and I'm sure it says a lot when the general public feels that way too.
Yeah. My good personal friend, Mike B, that, has been in the chat with us a lot this season. I was thinking about it this morning and trying to figure out how or what I wanted to say here. And, I met Hub probably about 2011, 2012, when I had started down working in Kankakee and started covering the Bears some during training camp. And I got to know him a little bit more throughout those years. And then I joined Shaw Media in early 2017, started working with him even closer. And really over the last 3 or 4 years had become more and more involved in our Bears coverage. And it had kind of become to the point where, not just a colleague and a friend, but like at one point over in the spring, I think it was around draft time, I was sitting on my front steps and ended up, Hub and I were trying to coordinate some kind of coverage. I can't remember what it was, but we ended up down a rabbit hole just talking football. And it wasn't about the Bears. It was like about something with like the Arizona Cardinals or the Arizona Cardinals or the Chargers or someone. I can't remember who it was, but like we were talking a little inside baseball, and he was telling me about something sources said to him about a situation. And I got done and I texted Mike B and I was like, I take it for granted the fact that I just am sitting on my front steps having a conversation with one of the best minds over the last, how many decades in covering NFL football.
And that's part of why he's so great to listen to on here and on the radio and on TV is like, it's interesting because, in doing the story that I wrote, it's weird to one, write a story about somebody that, you work with closely. And, in a lot of ways I felt weird about that, but that's kind of why I wrote the story the way I did with the first person perspective. But, I got to ask him some of these questions that I've never asked him. And he's like, he told me during the course of that, like, the radio and TV thing, that was all an accident. Like somebody somewhere decided, somebody somewhere invited him on a show once and they decided that he sounded good on radio. And you know what, you listen to he can talk about he can talk, about any team in football, any play, he knows all of it. And he's really good at putting those thoughts into words, much better than I am at putting thoughts into words. But you know what, we're all trying to work on it, right, Kyle?
Yeah, that's yeah, I'm certainly a person that stumbles across from time to
so
time.
in that regard, it's like that's kind of what we all aspire to.
Yeah, he's just fantastic, and it's really great to have him back in the fold. Like I said, it's going to be a ramp up process. I know a couple of people already asked if we were going to get a surprise visit from Hub today. Not today. He was down in Chicago, PFW, filming yesterday. He will be with us soon. I don't want to give a timetable. It's kind of up in the air. We're kind of feeling everything out so far. So yeah, I know a couple of people asked in here quickly, and then we'll start pivoting over, talk about this matchup. Asking about, when did Hub has Hub been watching the Bears? He has.
Mm-hmm.
I do know from talking to him that I don't believe he did until he got home, which was obviously a long while if you've read the pieces. But he is back into the football watching mode and getting caught up. So well, I'm sure I haven't really had a chance yet to sit down. It wasn't really the time to sit down and ask him what he thought of Justin Fields' progress, but that time is coming. We know how, maybe not excited is the right word. Hub certainly had a high opinion about the upside of Justin Fields. And seeing it explode, or Justin Fields' potential really start to come to fruition over the second half of this season in particular. I can't wait to really get into that with him and start breaking that down.
Yeah, I would. I'm really excited to hear what he has to say on Justin Fields as well, because also, nobody was harder on him than Hub was last year. Hub, when you and I would get excited, Kyle, Hub would come in and say, "Well, hold your horses a little bit."
Yeah, yeah, but he always kind of keeps us in check. But all right, guys, let's get into it, because this is a really intriguing game this weekend, and I'm going to start off with, I'll throw it up here because you kind of have to. It's become almost a mantra for the show here, with Mike B popping in at the beginning of every show with Bet the Over, because I'm actually concerned with Bet the Over this week, Sean, because I really don't know how this is going to play out. I guess I'll preface this. I expect the Bears to lose this game either way, but this could be a game that's surprisingly close or a complete blowout, because you're talking about a Bears team that is obviously really limited with the skill set that it has. It's going against a very, very good defense in Philly that can get to the pass rusher, but Justin Fields is doing things that is keeping the Bears in games. So it's really intriguing to me. I'm not sure how this is going to play out. And before I toss it over here, the other thing that I guess I'm interested in, and if it doesn't go well, I don't think you should jump to conclusions about this. But one of the big knocks during the Matt Nagy era was they really struggled coming out of the bye. Like, everyone was like, how do you look like that when you had that much time to prepare? Mm-hmm. I really want to see how Luke Getsy, with these 2 weeks off, what he's had or put in place to deal with this Eagles defense.
Yeah, I think we got a sneak peek of that with what they were calling the mini bye after the Thursday game, and I don't necessarily expect those big time changes with the offense like they did then, because clearly there was bigger issues with the offense early in the season. But yeah, I mean, they should have had some time to make adjustments and to change some things up and to really come up with a game plan. Without Darnell Mooney. I know it's been a couple of weeks since that injury, and they've been doing that, but if you can really sit down and figure out, okay, where are we gonna distribute the football without our top guy? Sometimes it takes an extra week to an extra week of prep can make a huge difference doing that. And you know what, I kind of do. I don't know. I want to pick this game to be close. I just feel like the Bears have been in games. They've been able to stay in games. But yeah, I mean, this Eagles team is the Bears have faced a lot of tough challenges this year, but this might be the toughest one. These guys are good offensive and defensively. I have a hard time seeing the Bears defense stopping the Eagles like at all. I mean, I just don't see how they're going to do it.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to do it. I don't see any way that they're going to be able to. The problem is, I just think they're too multidimensional. I mean, they don't run the ball a ton in a traditional sense. Like, Miles Sanders has been getting it going a little bit more, but the way when you combine it with Jalen Hurts' explosive playmaking ability, the ground game is obviously good. So, but when you combine that with AJ Brown and Devonta Smith on the outside, that's a tough combination for a good defense to stop, as we've seen all season long. A defense such as the Bears, which, let's face it, is near the bottom of the league. I don't see any way where the Eagles aren't, going for 28, 30 points, maybe even more than that. The Bears are going to have to score. Justin Fields is going to make plays in the game. Like, I do think the Bears are going to put some points Are they going to be able to do it consistently enough to keep the game close is a question. And really that comes down to me. Are they going to be able to protect Justin Fields?
Yeah, it all comes down to the trenches, I think. Are they going to be able to that Eagles defensive front, they got some monsters down there, and you watch them play, it's like they're disrupting on every single play. Somebody's, whether they're getting to the quarterback or not, they're making it tough on the offense, and that's going to be hard for this offensive line. And I know they've mentioned that Alex Leatherwood's still going to rotate in there at right tackle with Riley Reif. That's going to be a challenge for him, and of course for the rookie Braxton Jones on the other side at left tackle. Those are going to be issues. Those guys are going to be challenged by what the Eagles can bring up front. I do think that the Bears have, they've been able to score points against almost anybody over the last 2 months. So I do feel like I could see this kind of winding up more like the game against the Cowboys, where both teams scored 30 plus points, but the Bears, kind of fall off there in the second half or something like that. But it wouldn't surprise me. I am also of the opinion that you would bet the over on this one. I just think they're going to score a lot of points.
Yeah, I guess I lean towards the over and thinking it's going to turn into a shootout. There's something in the back of my mind though that is concerned that the pass rush is going to be too much for this Bears offensive line. That for all the progress we've seen from Justin Fields, he still has taken a lot of sacks, and that is one area he's still improving on. And against most teams, I think he's improving at a quick enough rate that he's able to cover it up. This is a specific scenario where the pass rush is so good. I mean, you wrote, I believe in your story yesterday, is it 4 guys with at least 8 sacks? I can't remember.
I think it's 5 guys with at least 6 sacks.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's just,
which is look at what the Bears got. And you're whoa.
It's not, yeah. It's not 1 or 2 guys in this Eagles defense that can get after the quarterback, and that's what's going to be a challenge for the Bears, because it's not going to stop all day. And the other thing, I guess, when I think about it in that context, one slight concern I have for Matt Eberflus as a head coach, and when I say slight concern, I want to make sure I stress slight concern. It's very early in his head coaching career. He's shown pretty much every ability to adapt so far.
Yeah, no.
Well, hold on one second. I want to finish that a little bit. I paused for a second there to gather my thoughts. I will say that I feel he's a bit too conservative still at times, and that could possibly be the fact that they are dealing with a team that is talent deficient. I don't know a better way to put it, but in a game like this, if you settle for field goals, if you punt on 4th and short situations, at midfield, slightly in plus territory, I don't really see the point of that. So I guess what I would like to see in this game is some more aggressiveness from the coaching staff.
Yeah, it's that age old thing that, happens when you're watching football, in front of a TV or up in the stands or whatever. It's like, okay, it's December, you got a losing record, you got a 4th and 1, just go for it. Like, who cares? You're at that point. But I really don't think that Matt Eberflus thinks that way. And yeah, he has. They have been conservative in times, and I think we were talking about this during our last show before the bye with some of the decisions that Luke Getsy and the offense made in some of those situations, that seemed really conservative. And you and I were debating that. Yeah, is that coming from Getsy or is that coming from the head coach? And it's probably a little bit of both, but I think the head coach has a lot of weight in those conversations, and ultimately it's kind of up to him. So yeah, I mean, if you want to beat the Eagles, you got to score touchdowns. I don't care how many field goals Cairo Santos can make. If you're not scoring touchdowns, you're not going to beat this team. And yeah, I'd like to see some aggressiveness in those situations that maybe we weren't seeing against the Packers a couple of weeks ago.
Want to start getting into your questions. If there's already a bunch in there, and then I threw the link in the chat as well. If you guys have specific questions, do me a favor, throw them back in the chat. Gary, I see your question about Chase Claypool and what happens if he's out this week. We're going to get that to in just a second here. Want to throw up good friend here. I'm scared to encourage him, but I will do it for a second here, and because I do want to hit on it. Our good friend Don Burr, under a new name here, Detroit versus everybody. I'm cracking up. I'm sure I will get blocked. Salt in the preferred condiment. Don, I won't block you as long as you don't spam the chat, and particularly with all caps, man. I don't mind if you're in here. I just when I'm trying to go through questions and keep track of stuff, and that happens. That's why I end up blocking you. But I will say this: you should feel much better over the last month about your Lions than I expected. You to be failing right now. They've really come on. That Jameson Williams touchdown, Sean. I know you probably were pretty disconnected on Sunday, but Jameson Williams had a touchdown early in that game, and my immediate thought was, oh man, like if Jameson Williams come back and start making an immediate impact with Amon-Ra St. Brown and like
it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, all of a sudden that Detroit offense is looking better. You like Jamal Williams. I love DeAndre Swift, despite the fact that they don't seem to use him enough. Yeah, I still have questions what they're going to do at quarterback long term. But the Detroit Lions suddenly looking like they might be turning a corner where next year they might be a problem.
Yeah, they got weapons. Certainly, if Williams is good to go, and he can keep building on that. I know he's that's his debut. He's still a rookie and a young guy, but yeah, they got the weapons to really make something happen here.
Yeah, definitely. And one more thing on that before we pivot over and get to these questions. The other thing with that's encouraging for Detroit is their run defense was horrific for the first half of the year, and it's quietly gotten a lot better. They have held Dalvin Cook to, I want to say, 23 yards on 15 carries. I was looking at it this morning. I know we should be talking Bears here, but we got plenty of time to get back over the Bears stuff. And we're in December. Time to start looking ahead a little bit here. And this Detroit team, I find intriguing. So,
and hey, they're on the schedule in a couple of weeks, so
they are.
We'll be talking about them soon. More.
And one more thing here, want to get a shout out to our sponsor, Marengo Guns. Always buying, always paying top dollar for your guns, ammo, and military items. Come see the experts at Marengo Gun. Open 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week. And I was so excited to get into it and talk Bears and talk Hub that I didn't even give the proper intro. Of course, you can find all of our Bears content at shawlocal.com. And if you want more Hub stuff, you're going to get it later this afternoon. Hub actually filed a column, his own personal take and thoughts on what the last 4 months have been. If you go to shawlocal.com this afternoon, that'll be dropping there. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Bears_Insider, at Kyle Nabors, at Sean_Hammond. If you're watching on YouTube, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Helps us grow the channel. It helps people find the show. It really does make a difference for us, guys. So we appreciate everyone that tunes in every week. And of course, we love all the comments. It helps us guide the show. It's a lot easier to know what you guys want to talk about and for us to guide this show when you guys are being active. So again, it's awesome. Appreciate everyone who's joined us throughout the season. Now let's dive into this, because despite the fact that the Bears are 3-10 and coming out of their bye week, usually the December when a team is 3-10 is really a grind. Like you're just kind of like, all right, let's get to the offseason and look ahead. But there still is plenty to look forward to with this team.
Kyle, I don't think I've ever been this excited to watch a 3-10 team play a 12-1 team. Yeah. It's like this is a matchup that you should be turning off and tuning in to somebody else. But it's like, I want to see what Justin Fields can do against a really, really good defense. And yeah, there's a lot to be excited for in this game, even though the Bears have nothing to play for.
Yeah. It's nice to have at least that still excited feeling to watch the Bears going into the last 4 weeks of the season, despite being 3-10. Now let's go ahead and dive in. Gary, your question: who's playing wide receiver this week with no Claypool? Is Velus going to actually look like a real wide receiver? Well, let's start with a Claypool update. He obviously, if you guys remember going back to the Green Bay game, had that play where got his leg caught under him, and I thought at the time that his season was over, and I was already immediately concerned that this was going to be something that he was going to miss a significant amount of time next year too. It looked really bad on replay and his initial reaction to it. Now he ended up coming back into that game. So when the Bears returned from their bye this week and he popped up these last 2 days as not practicing, Sean, I was a bit surprised by that.
Yeah, it was a little surprising, but a lot of times those guys have that game day adrenaline, or you know, you might suffer an injury during the game and think it's fine, and then wake up Monday morning and it feels totally different. But yeah, so he has not practiced at all this week, Chase Claypool. We'll see if he goes at all on Friday, but I think it's trending towards he may not be available, and then you don't have him, you don't have Darnell Mooney, and yeah, the question is, who do you throw the football to? Um, you know, you're looking at EQ St. Brown, Byron Pringle, Dante Pettis, N'Keal Harry, Velus Jones.
I mean,
Is there a number one guy there? Not really.
no. I mean,
So I think
I'm
you're just gonna have to spread it out to whoever's open. I don't think you're not necessarily going to be planning, like to get your Darnell Mooney 5 to 8 touches or whatever for any one of those guys.
yeah. There's a couple things I guess I want to hit on here. One is my first thought is I think we probably see a significantly expanded role for N'Keal Harry if Chase Claypool is out. Which
I would agree with that, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, you start looking around. No offense to EQ and Dante Pettis, but you have a pretty large sample size of what they are as wide receivers right now, and like those guys are going to be on the field, like they have to be out of necessity. But like you did trade for N'Keal Harry, he's a former first round pick. You saw that jump ball against Green Bay, and just that raw ability there. I think you're going to see a significant increase in in Harry's production, or at least targets this week. I think he's going to be much more involved in the game plan.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, N'Keal Harry is definitely a guy I would circle as somebody who's going to step up and be more involved. And I would throw Byron Pringle in that too. He's had a couple of moments. He got a touchdown against the Jets, but yeah, it'd be nice to see him make a couple of catches in a game and have an impact on more than just a play here or there.
And when you go back to the offseason signings, and I was not excited about any of these guys. But Pringle was the one that intrigued me the most. I thought he had the most upside of the group. Injuries have kind of derailed that, and I think maybe I don't want to say overestimated, because I didn't have high expectations, but I did think there was a higher chance that he could maybe have a mini breakout and kind of solidify himself as an established, NFL third or fourth receiver, something like that. So I think there's a chance that he could be that guy too, as you were saying. We had questions in the chat here, Gary following up with, and which wide receiver gets called up from the practice squad? What do you think?
Yeah, so looking at the practice squad, they have Doris Fountain and they have Simba Webster. Are there only 2 receivers down there? Yeah, somebody mentioned Isaiah Coulter. He is no longer with the team.
Let's not mention Isaiah. Yeah.
I would say Simba Webster is probably only going to be the guy if they need someone on special teams. So I feel like they would probably go Doris Fountain, but
yeah,
I don't know.
it's unfortunate Isaiah Coulter got away. I like the kid. I like him so much. I groaned at that because I was desperate in my season-long fantasy league for a wide receiver body last week, and I picked him up off of the waivers because he got both Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins were out with the Houston Texans. So I thought, Isaiah Coulter, I like that kid. He runs fast. He'll get that role. Didn't come to fruition. I know no one cares about my fantasy team, but that's why I groaned. And I do like the kid. I still think there's potential there. So considering where the Bears are at in their wide receiver core, I wish he was still on the practice squad because it would have been an intriguing find. I think part of the reason he wasn't involved in Houston this past week is because of the quarterback issues they're having down there. I think if he had a chance with a guy like Justin Fields, he might have a better chance of succeeding.
Yeah, I mean, he made some nice catches in his chances, in the preseason and during training camp, certainly. But yeah, I mean, I guess one of those two guys. I wouldn't necessarily expect them to be super involved in the offense, though. If you're looking at Doris Fountain or Simba Webster, that's definitely going to be your last guy off the bench.
Yeah, we're gonna get up to Mark. I know you have a question about free agency. We will get to that, Rick. Some stuff. I do want to talk about draft position, and we'll get into that. I think maybe let's hit that at the end, guys, because there's a lot to talk about there. With what's going on in Arizona and Houston almost winning that game, there's a lot I want to get to. We'll save that for the end and stick to Bears Eagles just for now. Rick, with the question, do you think more design runs for Justin Fields due to the Eagles pass rush, Sean?
Potentially, I do think that they may, try to keep it on the ground against these guys, whether that's more design runs, whether that's, more David Montgomery, because, you can run against this Eagles defense. They're certainly, statistically anyway, they're much better against the pass than they are against the run. And that might be the case early on, but obviously those things change once you get down by a touchdown or two or whatever. Then the game plan has to shift. But I think early in this game, there's going to be a big focus on running the football. And, we talked to Justin yesterday, but, there was so much focus on he was sick this week and there was talk of he's getting close to 1,000 yards. I don't think, I think we kind of dropped the ball and forgot to ask him about his shoulder, but obviously he played in that Green Bay game, so I think that's fine. I don't think that's going to be an issue.
He ran the ball.
He ran the ball really well in that game. So yeah, I mean, I certainly expect to see him continue to run the football as he has.
It's kind of, you talk about dropping the ball, but I think that's just part of that's a bye week, but part of it is just because of how good he looked in that Packers game. Because
it wasn't an issue.
Yeah, everyone went into that game wondering if he was going to be limited, if he was going to take a shot at some point, and that was going to be the end of it, and they had to pull him out because he aggravated it, and that wasn't the case. He looked really good, so it certainly doesn't feel like that's going to be an issue where they're going to be worrying about calling design runs. They definitely have to find a way to neutralize this Philly pass rush. My thing is, I think Philly is smart enough that they understand that. I also think the Philly run defense is actually a bit underrated. I think it's improved quite a bit over the course of the season. I think the Bears are going to struggle to run the ball in a traditional sense. I think it's going to come down to Justin Fields using his legs quite a bit if the Bears have success. I think you're going to see a lot of zone read here. The Bears need to find ways to keep those linebackers and those pass rushers from getting upfield. They need to be able to find a way to freeze those guys, even for a split second, to give Justin Fields a bit more time. So however they feel, whatever that looks like in the Bears playbook to accomplish that, that's the way they're going to go, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. And the more you can get those, you get those RPOs and stuff. That's the best way to neutralize some of those, those really good guys on the edge, with whether you're dealing with them in the pass game or the run game. I mean, it will be, we did learn this week that Khalil Herbert's getting close to returning too. That's another guy. He's not going to be back for this game, but you talk about trying to run the ball with David Montgomery. Hopefully they can get him back soon because, since Herbert went out, there hasn't really been a number 2 option at that running back spot. But yeah, I mean, I certainly think the Bears are going to, they're going to have to get a little bit creative here to beat this really good Eagles defense.
Have we heard any updates about Khalil Herbert, where he's at in his rehab?
No, and I'm trying to think now. I don't think I've seen him this week, but my understanding was, I believe, based on what Eberflus said, that they're potentially targeting next week as his return. I know it was a hip injury, but no, I haven't really seen him or heard a whole lot about where he's at in his recovery.
It'd be great to see him back over the last few weeks, not just because he was really coming on himself this season and carving out a role, but with the way the Bears offense has progressed in his absence, or since he went out, I'd like to see what it looks like with him back in the fold.
Yeah, you definitely would, because they had a really nice 1-2 punch with those two guys. And like I said, there really hasn't been a guy who's stepped up, as that second guy ever since Herbert went down.
Yeah, Rick, take you got this from like a RotoWire update, but from the sound that Herbert, who landed on IR with a hip injury after Week 10, is eligible to return next week against the Bills.
Yeah,
just
the
in
bye
time for
week,
Christmas.
the bye week doesn't count as a week, so it is 4 games, not 4 weeks. So yeah, he won't be back until next week at the earliest.
Obviously we'll talk Buffalo next week, but the Bills play on Saturday night. I was looking this morning, I didn't realize it. They have another lake effect snow warning, Sean. I don't know if you've seen that.
I was just starting to hear that yesterday.
Yeah, they're expecting 1 to 2 feet of snow, and most of that's coming on Saturday, including during the game. And it's against Miami, so that's going to be a fun watch.
Yeah, man. What? That's not good for Stephon Diggs in my fantasy team.
I'd say, yeah. If you're relying on
in the playoffs too. Oh,
yeah,
man.
it's not a great time for a blizzard for fantasy purposes, but there are few things when it comes to football I enjoy watching more than a good snow game.
Yeah, no, that's always fun and exciting to get those opportunities. And you were so bummed when we didn't get that a couple of weeks ago when they moved that game out of Buffalo, and so maybe we'll finally get one here.
Going back up, Mike Johnson. Mike, thanks for the question and joining once again. Are any of the rookies hitting the wall, Sean? What do you think?
I got to think about that one for a second. It's hard to say. I mean, I think on some level, most rookies hit a wall. They just maybe won't necessarily tell you that or say that, or it might be in subtle ways. I'm sure like a guy like Braxton Jones, who's in there in the trenches every week, is feeling it at this time of the year, whether bumps and bruises or whatnot. I don't know if I could really pinpoint one guy. It looked like somebody in the chat mentioned Dominique Robinson. I think that was more of just a case of like he really had a good game or two early on and has kind of disappeared since then. If you want to say he hit a wall, sure, I guess, but I don't know if like.
Well, what I think happens more than hitting a wall per se, particularly from a physical standpoint, that does happen a little bit. I mean, these guys are playing a longer season than they ever have in their lives, so there is a bit of a physical aspect to it. But what I think you see more often, and was the case with Dom Robinson, and I'm going to use a baseball kind of analogy here. Mm-hmm. Anyone who is a baseball fan will get this. We talk about young hitters like having success right away when they get called up, but like they talk about like the biggest thing is when the league adjusts to them, can they make the adjustment? Mm-hmm. And that happens at the NFL on a more subtle level. You saw that with Dom Robinson in particular, where he's a project that doesn't have a large repertoire of really pass rush moves in his arsenal. And the NFL pretty quickly, when they got him on film, was able to adjust. And he's talked about that, about trying to find new ways to get to the quarterback and being frustrated. So I think that tends to be the case more than anything, because I think it's more difficult in the NFL than most sports to make those large scale in season adjustments, like learning a new technique and getting it to the point where you can then beat an NFL left tackle, for instance. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah, to develop those skills. And especially when you're talking about like a pass rusher and a young pass rusher who is relatively new at the position. You're exactly right, Kyle. Like it takes time to learn those moves, and in season, you're so focused on the next game plan. I know these guys are always working on gaining new skills and subtle tweaks to stuff, but at the same time, they're trying to figure out how to beat the very next team on the schedule. And I think that's more than anything, what I feel like when you start talking about hitting a wall. I think a lot of the NFL hits a wall in December, and that's not just the rookies, that's everyone. I mean, it's a long season and it can get a little bit monotonous and certainly, it's much more apparent when you're a rookie and you haven't played a season this long. But yeah, I mean, A guy like Dominique Robinson, I think an off season will be really, really beneficial to him.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm trying to think, and it's hard to do right now just off the top of my head because the Bears have so many rookies on the roster, and so many of them have gotten into games, and I feel like I'm probably forgetting someone already. Dom Robinson. I guess what I'd say is I don't really think anyone hit a wall per se. It was either that like Kyler Gordon has had his moments of looking like the upside, the potential that we know, I think most of us feel is there. We've seen it, but we've also seen him struggle. But I don't think that was because he hit a wall. I think that's been kind of throughout the season. Velus Jones never really got off the ground, so I can't say he hit a wall. Alan done that with a question here. What if Velus Jones is more like Cordero Patterson than Tyreek Hill? Bears will need to make adjustment, but may not be all bad. I think we talked about that after the Packers game, maybe, Sean, about the need, or maybe it was going into the Packers game. I know we've talked about the comp to Cordero Patterson before, and yeah, I mean that is where I think that it's eventually going to a trend with Velus Jones is they got to get the ball to him, as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I think he did take a handoff in that Packers game, if I recall. It might have been the game before. I think it was a Packers game where they lined him up in the backfield and handed it off or pitched it or whatever to him. Yeah, I mean, get the ball into guys' hands as quickly as you can. When you have a weapon and you're struggling to utilize him right, the easiest way to get him the ball is to do it right after the snap. And so, we were talking about the receiver position earlier, and somebody asked us about Velus, and I do think you look at his snap share in that last game. That was he's trending towards the highest snap percentage that he's had all season. And so if Chase Claypool is out, I only think that's going to continue. I mean, he's not necessarily going to be. The question was something like, is he going to look like an actual receiver? I don't know. I don't know for sure about that, but I do think he's going to be more involved, and he's going to continue to be more involved, especially with Claypool out. And yeah, I mean, just they got to keep getting him the football. He's had some good moments, and he's looked really good on kick return the last couple of games. And I can't remember if I wrote this in a story or was saying this somewhere else. You look at the numbers; he doesn't have enough kick returns to qualify for the league leaders, but he would be right up there in terms of like the average yardage on his kick returns if he gets a few more in there and can qualify for that leaderboard.
He has looked better on special teams. I'm sitting here thinking trying to work through this in my head because ways to get Velus Jones the ball, and I think one of the first thoughts I have is a wide receiver screen, right? Because I'm thinking about the Bears needing to neutralize that pass rush from the Eagles, and you got guys like Equanimeous St. Brown and Dante Pettis, guys that can block on the edge. That seems like a scenario where Velus, you get the ball out quickly to him. My thing there is like the Eagles defense is so good. I worry about that play getting blown up quickly. But I think that's one option. I think you get them involved with some motion. One of those little shovel passes you see where he's coming across and it's just a little flip inside from Justin Fields. I think that's the type of stuff you're probably going to see much more over the last 4 weeks of the season, trying to get Velus Jones more involved. And I think you're going to see it quite a bit, actually, now that I think about it, this weekend against the Eagles. It just, with their pass rush, they need that. Like the Bears need that to try and neutralize that.
Yeah, we've seen Velus do these sweeps and things like that you're talking about, and it just feels like at some point he's going to have a big play off one of those. That's why they keep going back to that well, because they know that's those plays you build off. We talked about this last time we were on here. You build off those plays, and you might change. You do one thing differently the second time, and we saw what Christian Watson did on that sweep play against the Bears a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, they're just going to keep going back to that because he's really fast, and you just got to give him the ball, and at some point he's going to make a big play.
Rick's coming up here with our screen game is weak. Has been since forever. It has been pretty weak,
Since
man.
forever.
I can't really dispute that.
This transcends coaching staffs and
It
GMs
really
and
does feel like
quarterbacks.
the yeah, it really does feel like the Bears struggle with the screen game, no matter who the coach, quarterback, or wide receivers are. I don't quite understand it, but I get why, Rick, you have that feeling. Even despite that, I think like you're gonna see that play. I guess I would be surprised if we didn't see a wide receiver screen in the first half. It might not be to Bayless Jones, but I think that they're going to have to try that against the Eagles. It may get blown up because, like you said, the Bears' screen game has been pretty weak, but I think it's got to be in the repertoire. I want to start pivoting over, guys, though. Want to hit on, I know we had a question in here about Roquan Smith, want to talk about draft position and anything else we want to finish up on here. If you have any other questions, though, throw them in the chat about Bears Eagles. Sean, anything we haven't hit on that you've been looking at in this game?
No, just talking about the screen game there, just sparked in the back of my mind too. We spend so much time talking about the Eagles' defensive front, but when you talk about blowing up screens, like those DBs are really really good too. They got talent all over the place on that defense. So it's gonna be a really tough one on those Bears wide receivers.
So triple R up here
Triple
had
R.
triple R renewable, rechargeable, and rechargeable review. Any locker room talk on Rowe still being butthurt by polls? It's a podcast, I can say that, right? See if I get a call from anyone watching this in the company. I don't think I think I can get away with butthurt. Were you surprised by, like, I understand that he was asked the question. I was surprised he didn't just defer to, it's in the past. I'm looking ahead to the future and focused on what I can do to help the Ravens and my contract this offseason.
Because that was his, that was Roquan's canned answer about anything in the past, and about anytime we asked him about the contract situation when he was still here, after he returned to the practice field and stuff, he was like, I'm not focused on that. That's in the past, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I was a little surprised, but obviously this is a sore subject for him, and he wanted to get something off his chest. You know what? If Ryan Poles told him that he was going to be a part of the defense and he was going to build around him, you know what? I believe that's probably what Ryan Poles felt when he took the job. But obviously circumstances change. Your negotiations with a player without an agent, those things have an impact on that. And at a certain point, you got to make that decision. Are we going to keep going through these? Are we going to keep, hitting our head against the wall on these negotiations, or are we going to move on and get what we can for this player? And so I don't think you should be mad that he said that and then changed his mind.
I agree with you. It was a complicated thing to begin with, because of the fact that he was his own agent. Now, the thing that we have to be careful about when we're talking about this is he clearly is upset by the contract Ryan Poles offered him before the season started. We have no idea what those numbers are. Like, it could be that it was insulting. It could be that Roquan had completely unrealistic expectation for how he was going to get paid. And the other thing with it that we can say is once the season started, and I'm guessing, whether Roquan is overstating or misunderstanding something that happened in those negotiations. No matter what in that circumstance, once the season started, he didn't perform to a level that warranted him being paid as the top off-ball linebacker. And maybe he didn't want to be the top guy, but from the sounds of it, he wanted to be near the top, if not at the top. So when you combine that, like it's just like, man, just take the high road there,
Yeah, that would have been the easy thing to do, and obviously he didn't. But yeah, I mean, ball doesn't lie, right? Like You're not getting the turnovers. He had a couple of sacks, sure, but like Matt Eberflus wants somebody who can create turnovers in that spot, and Roquan Smith just hasn't really done a whole lot of that the last couple of years.
Yeah, I guess I don't have much else really to say on it. I wanted to answer the question, and I was surprised he said it, but like it's kind of the point where I don't know. I guess let's just move on. Hopefully that story kind of goes away, and until the offseason, like I said, I don't know until Ryan Poles is asked about it, and we're probably not going to have a conversation with Ryan until the postseason kind of breakdown. Because we didn't during the bye week or coming out of the bye week, which would have been the only other time I think that would have happened. So until then, I don't really think that we're going to know much more, unless we get kind of one of those national leaks behind the scene. But if it hadn't happened yet, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think we're going to learn a whole lot more about that situation.
That's one of those like 5 years from now, I'm going to be talking to somebody and they're going to know what actually happened, and I'm going to get it out of them. And I'm going to be like,
that's what happened.
Yeah, now I get it. But for now, everyone's going to be tight-lipped.
We'll see. We'll see what happens with his contract negotiations with Baltimore now, because now they have to deal with that, and they're also dealing with the same situation at the quarterback spot.
Yeah,
going to be an interesting offseason up there.
It certainly is. I'm sorry, I can't find the question. I think it was Mark that had asked it earlier. Our opinion on Elton Jenkins up in Green Bay, about a possibility in his versatility. I haven't honestly looked at the metrics close enough, Mark, to give you an idea of, like the eye test. I like him. I kind of want to look more at the analysis and see what the long-term potential is for him. See what the trends kind of look like. If you could kind of bring that up again next week, I'll try and remember to look at it. You have any initial thoughts on it, though?
No, I mean, look, the Bears want versatile guys. I do think the focus is going to be on getting a tackle, because I think you can feel good about Cody Whitehair and Tevin Jenkins at those guard spots. But, you're talking about a guy who Luke Getsy has a lot of familiarity with from his years in Green Bay. And you know what? They had 1 year together at Mississippi State, too, when Luke Getsy was the coordinator down there. So I don't know. Maybe he brings another friend along with him from Green Bay.
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. There was something else I wanted to get to here, and now I was looking at the chat. I hate when I do that. I start looking at the chat and forget where I wanted to go with the next thing. I'm going to go ahead and just pivot over here. Rick had a question about Alan Williams, or a comment. Well, he at first asked about any chance of a new defensive coordinator, and then said he's not sold on Alan Williams. I mean, that's not going to happen. Yeah, I mean, I guess I understand, Rick. The defense has been really bad. There's been zero pass rush, but it's kind of what you expected with the type of talent that they have on the field currently.
I think everyone understands that Alan Williams has been trying to figure this out with not a lot of really valuable pieces on that defense, especially the second half of the year after they traded Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn. I think I really enjoy listening to Alan Williams talk. I think he's a coach who a lot of guys respect, and you can question some of the decisions he's made on the field, but I think he's realized at times that he needs to blitz to create some pressure and change things up from maybe what he would ideally want to do. I think they just need more talent on that defense, and I'm willing to wait and see what Alan Williams can do with a more talented group.
Yeah, Rick, I mean, I'd say there's a 0% chance, pretty much, that outside of like Alan Williams being a surprise candidate to get a head coaching job, which isn't going to happen. Like he's not.
Yeah, that would be the only way I would think. I don't think they're going to just fire him.
Yeah, or change. Yeah, I mean that's not happening. If he struggles, they're going to invest a significant amount this offseason. I expect so on the defense. And if that's the case, And even after that, I don't expect like next year that they're going to be an elite unit, but I think you're going to see more pronounced progression midway through the season. If the defense is still struggling next year, I think you can have some real concern. But for now, I wouldn't think too much of it. And so I was talking there, I remembered what I wanted to say before, Sean, because you had mentioned the guards and feeling pretty good on the interior. I wanted to throw it out there for the chat. Sam Mustipher has been a bit of a whipping boy for Bears fans, and I know we in particular have kind of felt like that was too much. Hub was definitely beating that drum. And he struggled honestly at the beginning of the year. Like the change to the new system was more pronounced for Sam Mustipher, and he did struggle, and the criticism became much more warranted. But he's really kind of under the radar, settled in since taking back over at the center position. I want to see what the chat thinks. Do you guys feel like Sam Mustipher has been better? And do you feel confident if they decide that, hey, that worked? Let's go ahead and keep those three guys on the interior and focus on the tackles. Want to see what you guys think of Sam Mustipher.
Yeah, I think the last month he has played, certainly better than he was playing early in the season. And yeah, he's not like having those really obvious mistakes, which unfortunately is a lot of times when you're watching the O line, that's where you see, that's where you kind of form your opinions when you're watching on TV. I do think that I still don't know if he's really a long-term answer, but as far as like that he's the perfect backup, and the guy that you want who can play any of those interior positions, center, right guard, left guard. I think he's going to be around, certainly, and I think it's been really impressive the way that he has the way that he handled getting benched, which really only wound up being for like a quarter because of the injury to Lucas Patrick. But
yeah,
it's funny how that stuff works sometimes. Like, he spent the whole week feeling down, like, or pissed off that he was benched, whatever, and then all of a sudden he's back in the game at center within a couple of snaps and still holding on to that job.
Mike B now jumping in with Sam Mustipher is clearly benefiting from always having Jenkins next to him. Yeah, I mean Jenkins and Whitehair, and that could very well be true. But like if those guys are there, and the reason I asked that, and seeing Mike here, I see a lot of people talking about is Musty too small, and people talking about him as a backup. If the Bears went out and signed or drafted a center and made them the starter and Sam Mustipher the backup, I would have absolutely no problem with that. But what the reason I asked the question, and I guess the way I'm leaning right now is, as Mike B kind of pointed out, with them solidifying those guard positions and elevating Mustipher's play back to where I'd call it adequate, average, kind of where he was before. When we talk about the amount of other needs this team has, I'm not saying that precludes them from taking a center because or picking up a center, because that is a position that isn't going to cost you a ton in free agency. Those guys don't get a huge amount of money, but you did already take one stab at it in Lucas Patrick. I just think that there's probably better uses of resources if you can get to, if it continues to trend where he is playing at a league average level.
Yeah, and you know what? If you have a guy like Tevin Jenkins and you have a guy like Cody Whitehair next to him, that you can say that he's only playing well because those guys are next to him, but maybe that's a group that together can work well and knows the offense well, and if you have those guys next to him, he's not going to be such a liability as when Cody Whitehair was injured and you had other things going on at that left guard spot. But I do think that they are going to, whether it's bringing back Lucas Patrick for another year, I think he has another year on his contract, but they could easily get out of that if they don't want to do that, or whether it's just bringing somebody else in entirely. I do agree that that's going to be a focus on, one of the focuses on the offseason. I don't think it's priority number one, but it's certainly a priority. And somebody just mentioned Kramer, who they drafted. I would have said that Sam Mustipher was a little bit small for that center spot, and then they went and drafted Doug Kramer out of Illinois, who was even smaller. So I don't know what exactly their vision is for that position. But maybe they're okay with that size at that spot.
All right. Well, we're here at an hour, so we do got to get wrapped up, guys. I think a good place to end it though is where really we should be looking ahead for the Bears outside of Justin Fields, obviously, and the development of the young players. Is everyone, of course, I think this last month is going to be looking at tankathon.com and where the Bears stand. They are currently sitting at number 3 overall in the draft. There was the talk earlier about Arizona and Denver playing this weekend. It's a really interesting game because for when we talk about, it's not really all that interesting from an actual football standpoint, but it's an interesting
No, it's
game.
disgusting.
Yeah, but it's an interesting game when you look at it from the aspect that Arizona was already really struggling and is now without Kyler Gordon.
Kyler Murray.
Kyler Murray.
I was deathly afraid when they drafted Kyler Gordon that I would be writing Kyler Murray in all my stories accidentally.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how that game is going to play out now. You would think immediately, well, that just means Denver is going to win the game, but
well, is Russ still in concussion protocol?
Yeah, he's still in concussion protocol, and despite the fact that he played, or the Denver offense played a little bit better last week, I don't think that's a trend that can sustain itself. They're really bad, so I don't know how that game's going to play out. And the other thing I wanted to hit on here was it's a pretty long shot at this point. It would have been much more interesting though if Houston had pulled off that win against Dallas on Sunday. Sean, again, I don't know how closely you were paying any attention on Sunday, but Houston was right in that game. I thought they were actually going to win it, and if they had, that would have significantly altered the picture. Like, still, they would have been the favorite to be the number 1 pick, but it would have opened the door much wider for the Bears to be one of the teams to at least have a chance to end up at number 1.
Yeah, in that conversation. And Houston's got some winnable games these last couple of weeks. They play the Chiefs this week, but then they finish out with the Titans, the Jaguars, and the Colts. And certainly those last 2 games are very winnable. I know the Jaguars are playing better lately, but this don't rule it out that they might pick up another win or 2 here or there as we get down the stretch. And yeah, it just kind of comes down to whether the Bears can pick up a win against. I don't think they're going to beat the Eagles or the Bills, but weird things happen in these NFC North division games, and when you're playing those division opponents for a second time, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Bears pick up a win or wins against Detroit and Minnesota. And yeah, I see some people pointing out, Minnesota might not have a whole lot to play for in Week 18.
Yeah, because they're probably not going to be in contention for one of the top 2 spots. Well, only the one team gets the bye now,
and the Eagles got a 2-game lead at the moment, so somebody's going to have to beat the Eagles if the Vikings want any chance at that 1 seed.
And I think the Vikings are a flawed team. I mean, a good team, but a flawed team. And even if they had to play in Week 18, I don't think that's a game where the Bears couldn't win it. Like, the Vikings would easily be the favorite. I'd probably put them as like a touchdown favorite. But that's also a game where I think the Bears could win that.
Yeah, no, I certainly do. I mean, they played right there with them the first time they played them, and they were in that game all the way up until the end. And man, that feels like ages ago. The Smith-Marset fumble, like that was a whole different world. But yeah, I mean, as far as they're going to have the division locked up, unless they're fighting for that 1 seed, they're not going to have a whole lot to play for in Week 18. And so, yeah, you're looking at potentially a win there for the Bears, and that's going to hurt your draft spot a little bit there. Yeah, and you know what? That going back to, we started with that weird Denver and Arizona game. No matter who's playing quarterbacks, yeah, the Bears fans are gonna want Seattle, or excuse me, not Seattle. The pick's going to Seattle, but they're gonna want Denver to win that game because right now you're tied with the Broncos, and they're looking at the better pick because of the strength of schedule.
All right, Sean, let's go ahead and get out of here. But before we do, let's give a pick for this game. What do you got?
Oh man, I'm picking the Eagles. I keep going back and forth on the score and what exactly I see happening here. I think I do think the Bears are going to find a way to keep this fairly close. I would say Eagles by a touchdown, maybe like 31-24 or something.
I was going to say 34-23 Eagles is what I'm taking.
Okay.
I I just have a feeling that the Bears aren't going to be aggressive enough in the red zone. I think they just probably this defense is really the Philly defense. It's obviously really quality and it's going to tighten up in that red zone. I think the Bears end up having to kick too many field goals, and they just can't get enough stops on defense. So I think that probably ends up being the difference in the game. Now, if they execute in the red zone, it's going to be a fun game. I think on Sunday.
Yeah, you know what? If the Bears can just put some points up, it's going to be a fun game no matter what. And if Justin Fields is doing his thing again, I'm really excited to see him play against this defense because it's going to be a challenge. And you know what? If he can continue to elevate his game and play up to that, it's going to be really exciting.
All right. Well, thank you everyone who joined us this morning. It's been great catching up with everyone after a week off. It was, of course, awesome to be able to share an update on Hub and to see that coming back. Everyone enjoy a good weekend of football, though. I love this time of year. It's fantasy football playoffs. There's that juice going. You get games on Saturday. We get a triple header on Saturday all day long, and then on Sunday, even a fun game last night between San Francisco and Seattle. I love this time of year. Everyone enjoy the weekend. We will be back with you on Monday morning to wrap up Bears versus Eagles. Until then, goodbye, and everyone have a good weekend.